Questions over Cuba. Leaders around the world weighing in on Fidel Castro's death over the weekend. But here in the United States, many are now wondering what will happen with our relations with the communist nation. Incoming White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus making President-elect Donald Trump's plans on Cuban relations known yesterday.
I think President-elect Trump's been pretty clear that, there's nothing wrong with talking to people. He's been willing to talk to anybody, but we've got to have a better deal. We're not going to have a unilateral deal coming from Cuba back to the United States without some changes in their government. Repression, open markets, freedom of religion, political prisoners. These things need to change in order to have open and free relationships, and that's what President-elect Trump believes, and that's where he's going to head.
Joining us now is retired four-star general, former U.S. Army Vice Chief of Staff and Fox News military analyst Jack Keane. General Keane, what are your thoughts on improving relations with Cuba and extracting more from a more open relationship?
I think like most people, certainly talking to Cuba and trying to improve relations, nothing wrong with that, particularly given the fact we've had 60 years of repression in this regime and how impoverished the people are, as a result of that government and its policies. But clearly, the deal that President Obama made certainly was unfounded in the sense that we made concessions, got nothing in return of it. And it's not so much what we got in return. It's the fact that the Cuban people got nothing out of the deal. It's they who have been in prison for 60 years, who have been tortured for 60 years, and who have been economically repressed for 60 years. That's the sad story. So our concessions as going forward have to be about the people there, and this regime has to loosen up on its governing role of those people and what they're doing every single day and denying them the actual quality of life experience that most people have in other parts of the world, certainly in that hemisphere.
Well, with some of the reactions from some world leaders, even celebrities here in the United States, the leader of Canada, Justin Trudeau, in his initial statement, General, he went on and on talking about deep sorrow over Castro's death, larger-than-life leader who served his people for almost half a century, a legendary revolutionary and orator. He made significant improvements to education and the health care of his island nation. This is a man who tortured people, who murdered people, who imprisoned gays. How are people so separated from the truth of what Castro did, General?
Well, the far left has always romanticized the Maoist communist idea of revolution throughout the world. And, Castro was certainly the epitome of that in the Western Hemisphere. And they largely have continuously and persistently discounted what the role is of those kinds of governments. And as you indicate, just in 2015, they imprisoned 10,000 people that were not in jail. So this has been going on for 60 years, and the romanticization of them is pretty outrageous, and it flies certainly in the face of some facts. Yes, did he improve the education system? Was there some health care improvements? Yes. But overall, despite some of those improvements, the economic repression in Cuba is staggering. It pales by comparison to any other country in the hemisphere.
It explains why there was cheering in Miami on news of Castro's death. And I should point out that Justin Trudeau tried to walk back those comments on Fidel Castro. I want to move on to Iran. There are reports of a radioactive material being stolen from an Iranian nuclear plant, and it's raising concerns about the use of a dirty bomb in the future. The identity of the thieves currently unknown. General Keane, how concerned are you about the stolen radioactive material?
Well, first of all, that there's full disclosure by the Iranians to the IAEA is a good thing. As much as I'm opposed to just about everything Iran stands for, here they did something worthy. That way, all the intelligent networks, particularly in the Middle East, can be on alert for something like this. We'll just see how this happens. The fact that it is that there are these nuclear materials available in the Middle East and in Pakistan largely, and that radical Islamists have not been able to get their hands on these things up until now. If this is the case, it's only credit to the protection that this material is receiving. We don't know whether these are thieves just trying to sell it or whether there's a movement behind this, but the intelligence services will be all over this thing. I'm not all that concerned that this is going to show up someplace. Hopefully it does not, because now we've got our antennas up.
General Keane, but in terms of the Iranian nuclear deal with the new administration coming in, do you think that there's the potential? What do you think happens to that Iranian deal? Iran continues to, for example, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, has said that Iran is repeatedly violating that heavy water limit, which is used to moderate nuclear fission. And that's happened more than once. So, again, Iran is throwing it in our face.
Well, clearly, this will be on the table for the president-elect. It's not something I think he has to deal with immediately, but it's something that's something they're going to pay attention to and try to first understand what is the deal, what is Iran's compliance with the deal in terms of the inspection protocol that's taken place. And as you noted, there's been some violations of it, but there's also been a fair amount of compliance with other factors in the compliance protocol. The harsh reality is what makes the deal so awful is that Iran can get a nuclear weapon. The idea of the deal was to stop them from having a nuclear weapon. This deal permits them to get one in 15 years and get to a threshold capability in 10 years. And certainly, I think when the details of that are understood by everybody in the Trump administration, they're going to take a look at whether they should renegotiate this deal, or I think more logically what may happen is Iran's going to continue to try to dominate the region, and it's going to be provoking issues in the region, and we should begin to push back on that with our allies, and certainly sanctions are a part of it. I suspect when that starts to happen, Iran may just cut the deal itself. In other words, fold its hand on a deal because it doesn't want to be pushed back with those sanctions. But we'll see. This is something that will be on the administration's top list to certainly come to grips with.
And I love the rich irony that the Obama administration is telling the incoming Trump administration of the grave threat of a nuclear North Korea, when the Obama administration has done nothing, for the most part, to slow that activity in the last 8 years.
Well, yeah, listen, the cauldron that exists in the Middle East is certainly going to be front and center to the Trump administration because we're in conflict in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Syria, and also in Afghanistan. And any incoming president has to deal with that. And given what took place in the campaign, we all know that things could not be worse than what they currently are as a result of U.S. policies in the Middle East. What President Obama has consistently done is minimize those problems, exaggerated our degree of success with them, and that's why he's pointing, I think, I'm only speculating, at North Korea. North Korea is not certainly it's a threat in terms of nuclear weapons and the kind of leader that's there. But that leader knows full well any provocation on his part that's serious results in a destruction of the regime. And the only reason he has the nuclear weapons is to preserve the regime. And also there's a big brother in China there who has an interest in how far North Korea goes. So to declare that as the #1 foreign policy initiative that's going to be on his plate is an attempt to minimize all the other serious problems that we're dealing with in the world.
So great to talk to you as always, General. Thank you for being here early on a Monday. General Jack Keane.
Good talking to you, Megan.